Creating a buyer-ready space is more than just making things pretty. It's about telling the story of a home. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Alessandra, founder and principal designer of Zelda Design, who specializes in transforming lived-in spaces into stunning, market-ready showpieces. In this episode, she'll share staging secrets and design principles and why styling isn't just about trends, it's about strategy. And today we are here with Alessandra. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Lori.
Oh, yes, of course. And I always love to start out with, what inspired you to start Zelda Design Company? And what sets your approach apart from traditional stagers?
Wow.
I know that's a two-part question.
It is
That's
a two.
deep.
Yep. Yeah, it is a big question because I always knew that I gravitated towards interior design and architecture and everything relating to the home. And I have a particular personality that it was really hard for me to be an employee. I'm a good worker. I like to get things done, and I have a particular vision, and I felt that I've had amazing opportunities throughout my life to work with amazing interior design companies, but I had come to a point in my career where I realized that it's time for me to become my own leader in this world. So that's kind of how I ended up doing my own thing and creating Zelda Design Company, which I'm thinking of dropping the company because every time I hear it, I'm super not into it, but it's okay. Zelda Design. And
Super. Zelda Design.
Yeah, it's fun. It flows a little bit better, right?
Yes.
So I really wanted to start the company because I had a vision for what I liked, and I have a really eclectic style, and I gravitate towards a number of different interior ways that may not be the norm with other companies. So that's how I started doing what I was doing. And my first staging project came very early on. We did not talk about this, but one thing that I should tell you is that before I was doing interior design, I actually had my real estate license.
Okay.
And I was working for this guy, and one day he called me and he said, we got to sell this person's house. They don't want to pay for a stager, so can you go in there and help them make it look nice? And of course, there was no reason for me to say no, so I went in, and it was a very natural process because I already loved interior design. So I started moving furniture, I started getting rid of the tchotchkes, I started kind of just moving things around in a way that made more sense for the photos. And that was the beginning, and that was about 15 years ago at this point. I mean, that was
reading my mind. I was just going to ask you.
This was a long time ago. I mean, I was very early in my career. It wasn't even at the career level. It was just, this is the job that I have.
Yeah.
So that was my first hands-on experience. And then when I started doing interior design professionally and legitimately, I started making cold calls and reaching out to different types of professionals, architects, builders, contractors, and realtors. And the first thing that the realtors would ask me is, can you do a home edit? Can you style? Can you stage? And it was a natural transition. So it's really just a part of being in the interior design community and being in relationship with realtors and real estate salespeople.
Yeah, and how old is the company, Zelda Designs?
So Zelda Design is 2 years old.
Okay.
It's not so old, but I have been taking my own projects on over the last 3 years. So I would say the last 2 years it's really become much more official.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that you can go in and you can do a home edit to the home itself, whether you use the existing furniture or you can bring in some of your stuff that you have as well, and you can really transform the space. And why do you feel staging is such a crucial part of selling process in today's market?
Oh, this is also a big question.
Yeah.
Staging is, let me backtrack. Selling your home is an emotional process.
Yes.
Actually, owning a home and living in a home, it's so much a part of your identity. When you are ready to sell, so much time has passed and you've built up whatever is inside the house. And in a sense, the homeowner has a clouded vision on what it actually looks like on the inside. In their mind, there's sentiment, there is memory, there's all of these things that they can't see from the perspective of the seller or from the buyer. So really, my job is to prepare the home for somebody who is going to potentially make this their new home. They want to walk into the home and see that I can have a life here.
With online marketing as well, when people are searching for their next home, they look at, people gotten so used to, looking at everything on the internet. So, and from my understanding, it takes a buyer 8 seconds to really decide whether or not, okay, yes, this home is the one for me and I want to go see it, just by the pictures alone. And I know you mentioned earlier, you get the home ready and prepped for the pictures. So
definitely.
So you basically, through your design, you're, sort of, paving the way for a new buyer experience?
100%. And actually, it takes me back to that first experience when the broker said, hey, go in and clean it up, because it was for the photos. So it's really 2 parts. 1, it's for the photos, but 2, it's for people who are actually walking through the house. And sometimes it's a little harder for me as a designer to remember to put the photos as a priority just because I'm so much in it. But really, it is both of those reasons. So yes, 1 for the photos and 2 for that actual walkthrough. Because when there's clutter and when there are people's belongings that are too personal,
Yeah.
kind of feels a little invasive. And at this point in time, everything is very emotional. We make decisions oftentimes based off our emotions. So we want to walk into a home and really feel like it's inviting us in. Or we want to look at a photo and feel like, wow, I can see myself living here.
Yeah.
So there are a couple ways of doing that. 1 is by taking the existing items that they have, and sometimes what we will do is we will just change the furniture plan. So oftentimes you'll see that homeowners like to put everything against the wall. And that's fine. It's their prerogative. But as a stager, I want to make sure that there's a proper flow, that when multiple people are walking through the house, that they can walk around things and they can have a better experience. So part of it is just moving the furniture around, getting rid of the knickknacks, getting rid of anything that is too personal that a potential buyer can't see themselves living there. And then also there is the option to rent out furniture that's appropriate for this house. And if a seller has the opportunity to do that, it's highly recommended, because we really want to create a neutral environment that can attract as many people as possible, feel inviting, feel somewhat like an oasis, like I see potential here. I see my future here.
I want to make an offer on your property.
Exactly.
Yes.
So those are the 2 ways that we kind of go about it.
Okay. And do you offer any services that help people declutter, for instance? Like, do you help people reduce the space, or do you have people on your staff that help with that as well?
I actually have an amazing woman. She is a home organizer. She's not on my staff. She's somebody that I just work with separately, but she's amazing. And honestly, that's sometimes the hardest part for the homeowner, is to organize, is to take things out. So I leave it up to her. She's fantastic. She has her own system, and she really works with the homeowner to help them understand what needs to be done and get it done in a timely fashion. That's really one of the hardest things, is clearing out.
When do you think a homeowner should start doing that process?
Of clearing out?
Of clearing out, like a month in advance, 2 months? Like, let's say if they want to sell their home in the summertime and we're in the spring right now.
Yeah, now is the time.
Now, like, do you normally recommend like 2 to 3 months?
Well, usually what will happen in my experience is that I will be contacted by the realtor. So by the time they contact me, the homeowner is already
in their mind.
They're already selling. They're already listing. It's already at that point where, okay, well, you need to move fast. So ideally, yeah, we want to have that done before the house is listed.
Yeah, of
at
course.
least
Of
1
course.
month.
Okay.
And depending on the client, it could be very easy, or they could really have to take 4 months, 5 months to just wrap their head around, okay, I'm going to have to make a big life change. So it depends on the homeowner, but I would say if you could start doing it at least, a month in advance, that will put you in a really good place, because you don't want to be rushed. You want the home selling experience to be relaxing. You want to feel secure. And you also don't want to put the pressure on the realtor that they need to solve your problem. So if you can set yourself up for success by preparing your home in advance as much as possible, you're going to be better off for it, for sure.
What are some of the biggest mistakes homeowners make when trying to stage a home themselves?
They lose sight of the purpose of staging and just do what they think looks good rather than what will make the house sellable. So that's number one. But then there's also needing to keep things that don't belong there for the sake of staging. Like they have a sentimental vase that they really want to keep, and it has nothing to do with the room, but they love it, so they keep it. And it's again, just the biggest challenge is to see from the buyer's perspective, how are they going to step into this home? How are the images going to be translated? That's the hardest part. Part of the job of a stager, of an interior designer, is to have that bird's eye view, because oftentimes the homeowner is way too involved. That's the biggest challenge.
I could see that, because especially if you have a homeowner who has a big personality, and so it's how do you
and they love everything.
Yeah.
That's me. I probably would have to hire my own stager. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know. So on that note, how do you approach staging differently for a modern home versus a historic Pasadena property? Because that is one thing that drew me to you, is because you really transform some of the older homes, but keeping the aesthetic of the home, but make it in a more modern fashion, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
And it takes a really strategic way and know-how and a sense of design to really have a nice balance between the modern and the historical side of Pasadena.
Yeah. So I would say that it starts with the architecture of the home. If you have a really cool modernist hillside home in Hollywood Hills that is like, it's so posh and really edgy, we're not going to be seeing the same type of furniture as we're going to see in a classic craftsman bungalow. And there's a number of things that we take into consideration. There's the color palette. There is the style of the furniture itself. There is the scale of furniture that we're bringing into the space. There's the artwork. There are many layers that go into it. So here in Pasadena, we have so many beautiful historic homes. Craftsman is number one, but we have Monterey, we have Spanish Revival, we have some Art Deco even. There's a number.
Colonial revivals.
Colonial Revival, yeah. And then we also have in Altadena, like the Jane's Village, the Jane's cottages. Very particular style of architecture. So there's a big eclectic mix here in Pasadena. But what you're going to find is that for some of these more historic homes, I would suggest, especially for like a craftsman, that we're going to go with a more muted color palette, and we're going to go with some more traditional furniture. We don't want it to look old, but we want it to make sense in the style of the home. Whereas you have a little bit more room to play when you're in that really mod house with the large windows and the combination of steel and cement and brick and all types of other materials that you might not see in a more traditional style house. So you can kind of play on those materials. You can play on those textures by using furniture that is a little bit more dynamic, that might be a little louder, that might have some pop to it. So really just looking at the architecture, thinking about how it feels, thinking about the language of the design, and trying to make furniture that's according to that. Or not make, but rather place.
Yeah.
Same with the artwork. You know, you want it to make sense for the room that it's in. So if you have an entire Western house, you know, from floor to the ceiling, we want to put some artwork in there that makes sense with the room.
Yes.
You know? So just having a knowledge of architecture and design, it is somewhat of a natural process, and it's actually a little bit of a challenge to describe because it feels natural. But that's kind of how I would describe the process. Did that make sense for you?
Yeah, it did. It absolutely did, because you're taking, you know, like a snapshot of time of the home, and you're using the story of the craftsman of the home, and how that could relate, you know, in that time period, like as if you were going to be living there, like the aesthetic of the home.
Yeah.
Is there a particular home that you love to design?
I definitely lean towards Spanish colonial.
Okay. With the arches?
Yeah, and the brickwork and the tiles and you know, the stuccoed walls and even the windows. I mean, like, I think there's so much to it that I really relate to. One, because of my personal background. You know, I'm Spanish, which is not even really so connected to like Spanish colonial architecture here in LA, but I do feel like just that the influence of that style I really connect to, and I appreciate it, and it's familiar. You know, I grew up here in LA. I grew up in neighborhoods where this is what I was seeing. You know, I remember the first trip that I took to see an adobe home, which is not Spanish colonial, but it's in the world,
The realm.
You know, there is some overlap. There's a connection, and I remember I was so taken by it. It made so much sense for me, and I just felt like my soul was like really gravitating towards this style. So that's something that I really lean towards, and I don't know. There's something.
The colors are very vibrant and very, you
Yeah,
know.
you can play.
Yeah.
You can play
Yeah.
in a way that makes sense to me naturally. So
Yeah.
I really love a Spanish colonial home.
So the process, can you walk us through your process when you take on a new project, from consultation to the final reveal?
Yes, definitely. So firstly, I meet with the client and I do what we call a discovery call. And we figure out, okay, what are your goals here? Are you wanting a full service experience, or do you want to have hands-on, you know, what level of involvement do you want to have? So I kind of gauge the home seller's perspective on things and understand what are their expectations. And then once we have that phone call, then we go through the process. So I walk them through what to expect. You know, when you're staging a home, when you're selling a home, it's not a linear process. It really is ups and downs. There are periods in the beginning, it's very exciting. And then there are periods where it's like, okay, what's happening? I'm waiting. And then you're stressed because it's like, oh my God, my furniture is all over the place. So there's a lot of things that go into it. So I walk them through that process. And then once we're ready to get started, depending on which service they want, whether it's a home edit where we take what they already have and kind of move things around, remove things, add a few things, or if it's a full staging where we remove everything and then we bring everything new, that's where the process is gonna kind of divert. So for a home edit process, it's pretty simple. So this could be done in one day, depending on the size of the home. Typically, it's not that big of a deal. And I bring the movers in, and we start moving things around. I'm very hands-on myself. I am in there making the decisions in real time.
Okay.
I'm not sending someone else to, you know, look at a floor plan and say, okay, do this. Like, I'm actually in the space and seeing how it feels.
Okay, good.
And if they have a lot of clutter, if they have a lot of things, I will send my home organizer in beforehand.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not that big of a deal, and she can work side by side with me. So we will go through room by room by room, you know, starting with the living room, going into the dining room, those main areas. And then we work our way into the bedroom. And we basically, the movers and I make the decisions on the spot. Okay, we need to move the sofa. Let's move it here. Oh, this is missing a coffee table. Okay, check. We know we need to swap that out. So it's a little bit of a process. Hopefully it's they have everything that we can use, but it's kind of a little bit of a back and forth. And once it's done, anything that we remove out, it either goes into the receiving warehouse or goes into their storage or wherever the homeowner decides that they want to put it. and then you go in and you photograph and you do all those things. So then when we have a full-blown staging experience, then it's definitely more of a streamlined process.
Yeah.
So I am going in beforehand and really looking at the floor plan of the home and selecting the furniture that makes sense and that works with their budget, because we rent the furniture as stagers, you know, the furniture is rented. So the homeowner is, depending on the agreement with the realtor and the homeowner, it's either part of the fee when they sell the house, or it's the homeowner who's putting the money out up front. But it's on a rentable basis. So, you know, 2 weeks, 1 month, whatever the situation may be, that's kind of how that works. And it's just item by item, okay? So we have 5 bed frames, we have 3 sofas, we have 10 chairs, whatever it is, we basically list it out, and everything is itemized line by line. Now that's my process. I know other people do it differently, but that's just how I work. It makes more sense for me, especially because staging is not my main design format.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, plug, I also do full service interior design for homeowners who want their interiors the way that they are forever.
Yeah, no, and that's what I also love about Zelda Design.
Yeah.
You know,
so what we do is basically we have the movers come in, they take everything out. After all of the items have been selected, we move everything in, and it's just like it's a swapping process. And it's pretty straightforward, and it's definitely worthwhile.
And what are a few easy, budget-friendly staging tips that sellers could apply right now?
Okay. First and foremost, get rid of your clutter. If you have to do it by yourself, do it. If you want to just shove everything into a drawer, do it. It's worth it. You don't want to be having clutter in your house. Get rid of all of your personal home photos. I know you love the family portraits that the photographer took of you guys 5 years ago, but get it off the wall. We don't want to see that. And it's a little bit of a harsh reality, but it's true. The home buyer wants to see themselves in the home. So anything that's too personal, anything that's clutter, we want to remove it right away. You want the house to be clean. Clean it up, mop the floors, dust the countertops. What kind of home do you want to walk into? When you go to a hotel, do you want to be walking into a dirty hotel? No way. You want it to feel clean and fresh and open.
Yes.
Another tip that I would recommend is to open the windows. Some people like to have windows closed, blinds drawn. We want it to feel bright and airy and welcoming.
Yes.
So open up the windows. What else do I have?
What about light bulbs? Do you think you should have like a softer light bulb versus like a white, like a energy efficient, like bright white in your face type of light bulb?
So I really like 3000 Kelvin. It's 3000 K. That's kind of my standard bulb when I'm going into a home. Sometimes if it's a little bit moodier of a space, or if it's like a table lamp, I'll make it a little bit warmer. But what we want to do is avoid the hospital lighting. Anything that's too blue, get rid of it. You know, don't go higher than 3000. That's my recommendation.
Gotcha. What is the color that everybody is like talking about? Is there a certain color that even if you want to do a pop accent with a pillow that you know maybe somebody could put in their home?
Yeah. So I know that the trend over the last few years has to have everything be gray and white, which is not actually even a color, it's just more of a palette. But I would really recommend leaning more into the warmer hues, like the browns, the tans, the earthier elements. Even if you could have some kind of like sage or like a lighter muted green. I think when it comes to staging, that muted color palettes are my preferred way of doing things. So if you want to bring a yellow, yellows are wonderful. Let's go for like a pastel yellow, or let's go for a muted yellow, you know, something that's just very relaxing and welcoming, but still embraces that spring energy.
Yeah.
So I really like yellows, but subtle. You know, we're not looking for lemon yellow, case in point, which is beautiful, by the way. I think there's a place for it, but not when you're staging your house.
Yeah.
And what else? You know, I think those sages, those pastel yellows, even if you want to be introducing some blues, but blue can be kind of tricky because sometimes like a pastel blue is not so nice. So I don't know. I'm going to cut the blue out. I really like the greens and the yellows.
And the
I'm gonna
greens,
stick with
yellows,
that.
earth tones.
Yeah.
Because you can always accent it like a vase or something with it that has a different brighter color that really make that pop. So
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I would say lean more towards like the neutral browns and the off-whites, and stay away if you can from more of the gray look. Gray is not always as inviting as it
Gray to
may
me is
be.
cold.
Yeah, it is. It is
Yeah.
a little bit cold, especially if you're in a historic home. You know,
Yeah.
gray was not a palette
Yeah.
back in the day. You know,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
not going to go into a home 100 years ago and see gray as the baseline.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, you want to be leaning more into a warmer, inviting, earthier feel.
Awesome. Well, Alessandra, thank you so much for being here. And I just love the fact that you can provide so many services that can really help, yes, homeowners that are looking to sell their property, but also homeowners that, you know, maybe they just want to change of their style, and they want to, you know, take a little bit of their home equity out and really invest it in their home.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and it's great that you offer that forever vibe. You know, you're not just here, you know, just to, you know, stage and go. You're here for forever, and
Thank you.
and that's what I love. So I so appreciate you being here and taking the time and just sharing with our viewers of everything and how you can, and your vendors and your partners, and how you can really transform the space into something that's just truly unforgettable. Alessandra, thank you so much for showing us how intentional design can transform a space and spark that emotional connections buyers are looking for. If you're thinking about listing your home and want to make the strongest first impression possible, visit sellingwithlori.com to learn how I bring together top-tier styling professionals and strategy to help you sell smarter.